Ever notice how we can be doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing and still feel strangely drained? Not burned out, not overwhelmed, just thinner than we used to be. We keep saying yes, we keep showing up, and somehow we're more tired than the work actually explains. That's worth noticing because if the output doesn't match the input, there's a leak in the system. Most of the time, we don't say yes because we're weak. We say yes because we're capable, right? Reliable, the kind of man that people can count on when the stakes are high. That identity matters, but there's a quiet tension that comes with that role. By the end of the week, we're worn down. And it's hard to point to exactly why we're worn down because nothing blew up, nothing necessarily went wrong. You just feel like you've been running a race in sand. Here's the strange thing. Saying yes rarely feels like this big decision. It feels small. It feels polite. It feels responsible. It's just one more thing, right? But then another thing and another thing and another thing. And before we realize it, the calendar starts to look like this game of Tetris that nobody's trying to win. We're just frantically moving blocks to keep the screen from overflowing. We've mistaken these busy hands for meaningful direction. But when your margins get that thin, you don't have a life anymore. You just have a schedule. What keeps showing up is this. Every yes takes something. Not necessarily dramatically, not all at once. It's like this slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it when you're parked. You don't notice it on the highway, but eventually you realize the steering feels heavy. You're driving on the rim of that tire, wondering why every mile feels like a fight with the steering wheel. The problem isn't that we say yes to too much. It's that we rarely notice what it costs us over time. Availability feels generous until it becomes this automatic thing that's expected. Then it stops being a choice and it starts feeling like a cage. Now, this isn't about boundaries or being more assertive. It's simpler than that. It's about noticing that saying yes is never neutral. Most of us don't give our energy away on purpose. We just don't track it very carefully because the cost doesn't show up when we agree. It shows up 3 weeks later when we realize that we haven't had a real conversation with our kids or a quiet thought in a month. That this usually lands in those quiet moments. You realize you're doing a lot, but very little of it feels like it's actually yours. You're helpful, you're dependable, but you're stretched thin in places you didn't mean to be stretched at all. You're not angry about it. You're just depleted. This is where all the noise comes in. Oh, just say no more. Protect your time, which those things sound fine until we remember that saying yes is how we built up the reputations that we have, or the careers that we have, the families that we have in the first place. The problem isn't generosity. It's the fact that we don't examine what we're giving and what the cost is. Because when everything is a priority, nothing is. When every yes is automatic, your life isn't yours anymore. It belongs to anyone who has your phone number. So if you've been feeling worn down lately without a clear reason, it's probably not because you're doing too much. It's because you're saying yes without noticing what you're trading away. That feeling of being thinner than the work explains, that's not weakness. Again, that's information. And once you see it, things don't get aggressive. They don't get dramatic. They just get clearer. But here's the most dangerous part of this realization. Once you start cutting out the yes traps and you finally get a clear view of your path, you might realize that you've been standing right in front of the door you've wanted to open for years. And for a lot of men, that's exactly the scariest moment of all. Because being busy was a great excuse for why we haven't reached our potential yet. If you started to clear the deck and you're feeling a new kind of tension, a fear of actually succeeding, I want you to watch this next video because you're closer than you think. And that's the problem.